Yeah, yeah. You can take your chair wherever you want to sit. Once, yes, you can come here too. Yeah. Um, they. Well, let me be careful what I say. We are live, right? So thank you for being here. Just when you think it couldn't get worse. So at today's press conference, Mr. Lowe said, just because there is inflation somewhere else in the world doesn't mean that Ghana has to have inflation. Could someone send this guy a textbook, the basic textbook on economics? But I guess Lowe is part of a very desperate camp that is seeking to avoid scrutiny of its record in government, and secondly, its lack of plans. And so they and their handlers, this is low, they and their handlers are trying to create an alternate narrative. I saw somewhere, I think it was in the Kaichor News, that there was, I think, a Peeping Tom article which says that the government has no plan. So it's supported by a slew of writers, many of them anonymous, and I see them popping up with the same narrative in Starbrook and the Kaichor and at the press conferences of APNU. Now you can't change facts. And that is why every week we'll come here, and I urge all of those who are sympathetic to the PPP to help magnify this. The fact of the matter is that APNU does not have a history of economic achievements. The 28 years they were in office, they left the country as a hippie country, one of the poorest countries in the world, with no opportunities from which people are fleeing. We had shortages of food, jobs, everything else, social services. That is after 28 years running this country. And the fact of the matter is that when they came back into office, by the time they left office in the 5 years, they had returned to the old tricks. Constitutional violations. We have had about 20 odd constitutional violations in the 5 years. The most egregious was the refusal to honor the no confidence motion and then to illegally try to unilaterally install a chairman at GCOM. But there are several others. Secondly, we had lost jobs in large numbers. We'd lost welfare. Many people had what they were benefiting from before taken away from them, the pensioners, free water, the children grant, etc. I can go down. It's a fact of the matter that it was the most rapid growth of taxation in our entire history, that over 200 taxes and fees were instituted. The government collected nearly over $80 billion more in taxes in that period. That's their record. And then the worst one is the return to the sucking eggs, as we call it, like dogs sucking eggs. They're trying to steal elections. So that's their record. No plan whatsoever. So For several weeks, we've been pointing this out, so I think they need to come up with a counter-narrative. So the counter-narrative is, oh, we were thinking about doing that. That's their new thing now. We were thinking about any project that the PPP is doing. Now, we were thinking about doing that. That was part of our plan. We had that in mind. So let's talk through a bit about what they were thinking about. So the president went to Linden and spoke about the Berbice River Bridge. The crossing, I will come to Berbice in a minute, but the Linden Bridge across the Demerara River in Linden. We have moved in 3 years from what was to implementing this project, to starting the implementation of the project after 3 years in government. Every single project that you have seen there, if you go back to the National Development Strategy, which was done in the 90s, and as I said before, there were 7 volumes with over 3,000 pages of documentation done for that strategy. The bridge across the river at Wisma was listed. The road to Brazil was listed. The 4-lane highway parallel to the road on the east bank going up to Soesdijk was listed there. The new bridge across the Demerara River right here, crossing over to Region 3, was part of the plan. So if you're talking about documented strategy or intention, you'd have no such comparable document from APNU. These were long part of the planning process. So how did APNU try to get bridges developed? First of all, we know that Mr. Patterson is before the court today. He was charged for a study that was done on the crossing here between Region 4 and Region 3. And why was he charged for this and now facing a corruption charge and before the court? That there was an open bid, the bid was annulled, and Mr. Patterson then took an unsolicited offer to the cabinet. Unsolicited, that meant someone went in, offered him directly a proposal by passing the bidding process. He then took that to the cabinet. Now the law, the Procurement Act of Guyana says that you cannot take a document directly to the cabinet because cabinet has no right of approval of contracts. When I was president, we removed the right of cabinet to approve contracts. Cabinet can only issue no objections to contracts. If they withhold a no objection, they have to state why. If they withhold it, they can't then say, let's award this to the next bidder. They have to then send it back to the tender board. So that's the law of the country. He bypassed that process, illegally took the proposal to the cabinet. Cabinet awarded the contract illegally. Then they took money from the Harbor Bridge account and funded the project. A large sum of money where they can't now reconcile the balances on the contract versus how much money was taken. He's charged before the court. We never got to the point of even awarding the bridge. This was a study for a 3-lane bridge here coming into Georgetown that would have been still opening. So for the next century, the next 60 years into our future, we'd be stuck with a 3-lane bridge that was going to wind its way just out of the area by where Monishwar is and go into Houston on Stanley Ming's land, taking a turn, and we'd be stuck with that project forever. We never got to the stage of even contracting, because I suspect that there was money to make even on their studies, so they left it at the studies. Had we had APNU in government, you would never have that bridge. And the fact of the matter is that this can be borne out by their record. So that is how we move. We came back into office, we said, we're not going to do a 3-lane bridge. You need a 4-lane fixed structured bridge so that it can remain open all the time. That's the only way you will do several things. One, you will reduce the time and the inefficiencies and the maintenance costs, future maintenance costs, because once you have moving parts, you have a lot of costs. Two, we will then be able to open up all the opportunities on the West Bank. Because if you don't have a fixed structure and of the nature that we're building, it's hard to move land containers, develop wharving facilities and other facilities on that side of the river. That was part of our planning process. As a result of which, we did the feasibility study, we raised the money, and through a public process, we awarded the contract. We had some of the top negotiators in the country, some Mr. Hosty, Bert Smith, Gaskin, an engineer, along with this Secretary to the Treasury, Pasha, and they were key negotiators. We concluded a contract. The bridge is under construction now. The bridge in Linden, they did a study somewhere in 2016. And again, I don't know about the details of that study because I'm finding out how much money was spent, but they love the studies. The study was for a 2-lane bridge. They came up with $30-odd million for the 2-lane bridge. Just imagine 2016, 30-odd million with no inflation. We've managed, from then to now, prices have moved because the economy has moved. And we managed to get a 4-lane bridge awarded for about $35-36 million. A 4-lane bridge. They had a 2-lane bridge for over 30 million. In 2016, a study, just the study. That's all they're good at. So if they think about it and study something, that's good enough. That's not the nature of the People's Progressive Party. So they were thinking about doing this 4-lane road to the Soesdijk Highway. What was holding them back? In 3 years, we've completed the 4-lane road from Georgetown to Diamond. That has brought ease to traffic, large numbers of people. An award has already been made to Busby Dam, and this year we're going to award the remaining part to Soesdijk. So this is crucial for us. So what is a little irksome though is that they believe that people, I don't know how you say this with a straight face, that if you believe that if you think about something or mention it once, that is how you actually get it implemented. And so I want to come to the Stabroek News editorial called Skeldon 2.0, because I think the same affliction, the same work concept of how projects are done reside in the person who wrote this editorial, as it is in APNU. That somehow a project is done by an announcement. The announcement by the president comes at the end of the project preparation. But what it takes to get to that announcement is a lot of hard work that often governments or politicians are not prepared to put in. So how did we get to some of these projects? And that's very important to us. You can make all sorts of promises. So the Skeldon 2.0, this editorial, says a couple of things. The government is doing projects, a few of these projects, but almost all are delayed. So they said, another among these pointed out by Minister Edgels are Cemetery Road and Conversation Tree expansion projects. So it's true, these projects are delayed. But projects, and they blame the government for the delay. It's true that projects can be delayed, but for what reasons? Sometimes there are real reasons: shortage of material, difficulty in working in environments where you have to work along with traffic flow. But they don't see anything good in the projects themselves. They're concerned about, it's delayed for 5 months or 4 months, and therefore the government is to be blamed. Buying into the line of APNU, which stands on the sideline and only gripes and complains. But I want to say to you that if APNU was in power, you probably wouldn't have had the expansion of the Cemetery Road. They would do a study on it, yes, or think about it. But it would have never been done. And since it wouldn't have been done, it wouldn't have been delayed. So Stabroek would have been very happy because it's not delayed, but it's not done. At the end of the period, you're never going to have it happen. The fact of the matter, even with the delays, and we don't like delays, but we don't set out to, the government don't set out to have a project delayed. It's part of what you have to deal with in life, in daily life, in a country of our nature, especially a country that is growing so fast as our country is. So at the end of that project, people going to South Georgetown would start getting a better experience coming in from the East Bank. They don't see the bigger project. Stabroek News will not speak about the master plan for Georgetown, which we have spoken about already, and the master plan for improving traffic flow for the most populous region in our country, Region 4, that we're now building a 4-lane road from Mahika to Georgetown on the railway embankment that would see considerable improvement, even if it's going to be delayed for 6 months beyond. At the end of the period, it would see considerable improvement for the people who live on the East Coast coming into the city. And that when they come into the city, they would not have a choke point by the Russian embassy where a 4-lane gets converted into 2 lanes, that traffic could be diffused along the East Coast at Ogle, where we will have a 4-lane road at Ogle, bypassing the city, going straight to the East Bank, but connecting back with Aubrey Barker Road, so the entire South Georgetown now would have access onto Ogle. So they don't have to come through the city anymore. You can come from the East Coast, drive into the city, come to Conversation Tree, then go to a 4-lane road that runs between Campbellville and Prashad Nagar, 4 lanes there, or you can come down to the Russian embassy, or you can at Ogle take a bypass and come into the city through Aubrey Barker Road. Not a word about that. Oh, they're concerned about the few months delayed in the Cemetery Road bypass and the one for Conversation Tree, without talking about the master plan. And we have a master plan. So not like APNU. You wouldn't hear Patterson. And I know, anyhow, I'll talk about that a little bit later, but you wouldn't hear them talk about this plan. I can go on to talk about the traffic flow from the East Bank. And when the other 4-lane road from Crane gets connected through the bridge and then through the connector road coming all the way to Ogle, you would have 12 lanes coming in from the East Bank into the city. This is the plan for the people who use these roads, the people of this country. Under APNU, there would have been no delay because none of this would have been done, as we've seen. So, another example they mentioned, so after Cemetery Road and Conversation Tree, they said another example is the Schooner to Crane bypass on the West Demerara, a road of a mere 4.1 kilometers. So it's a mere 4.1 kilometers for Starboard News. But we had to find the resources, which we did from the Treasury. We didn't take a loan. 2, we had to design the road. We had to acquire land for the road to come past there. There are several bridges along that road, large numbers of bridges along the road to come from the bypass, in this mere bypass. But this mere bypass will improve the traffic time for people coming from the West Bank. It will cut out probably half an hour in the morning. Half an hour, this mere bypass. And yes, it might be delayed a few months, but it is happening. You can go on the road and you can see it being built today. And they should be proud that it's being built by local contractors too. They should be proud of that. But that, again, the president made a high-profile visit in July. They're complaining about, oh, the president is going to visit these things, but they're delayed. As though they have a big problem with him visiting things in this country. That triggers them. The Linden Mabura Highway contract, again, Ed Hill said, oh, only about 16 kilometers have been completed, and this is a major road. And the new Demerara Harbor Bridge, again, is delayed. Now, clearly, they don't, and the reasons they're saying, all of these projects suffered from the same maladies. A government with its pocket full trying to do too much too quickly, using contractors who are often inexperienced and under-equipped both in machinery and labor. So that's what they're saying. Now, I already told you how we went out to tender for the bridge. And the bridge is going to be completed. They don't see this as a massive achievement that would transform the lives of people there. But the contractors are inexperienced. So this is one of the best companies building bridges in the world. When we went to tender for the contract for the Linden Mabura Highway, this was done through a grant that we had from the British government and a significant loan from the CDB. And we had to go through an international tender. We had to have a no objection for the contractor from the CDB. This is not an inexperienced contractor. The contractor is one of the major contractors building roads in Brazil. So again, they have it wrong. They have it wrong there. But at the end of the day, this project will be completed, all of these projects. So then they reserve the best for last, the gas to energy project. So first of all, so again, this project may be delayed, but Jagdeo said sometime in May of last year that the timeline had not been affected. Now the timeline has been affected, but it's not because of anything except the handing over of the site was later than anticipated. And they know that. They already know that. But they said here that as for now, as for how much we'll pay for electricity in 2021, when Mr. Jagdeo was selling the project, he had claimed the price per kilowatt per hour of electricity could be reduced by about 80% when the project comes on stream. His tariff promise has since been quietly revised to 50% of the current level. So again, a falsehood. I said that the price per generation, that's what could support even if a 80% reduction in tariffs, because we were at that time generating power maybe at 22 cents per kilowatt hour, and we were going to generate power here at maximum between 4 to 6 cents per kilowatt hour. At that time, we were still working on the project. We have now recognized we'll generate power at 4 cents per kilowatt hour. But their transmission cost to GPL. So we said we will sell power at 11 cents per kilowatt hour. GPL will make a significant profit from selling this power. The consumers in Guyana will see their bill being cut by 50%, and they will save over $100 million US per annum, or $20 billion. There's been no changing of the numbers. The 80% that I'm talking about is because we will reduce generation costs by more than 80%. It doesn't mean we're going to lower the tariff by 80%. We are lowering the tariff by 50% because GPL has additional costs outside of the generation costs, which is transmission costs. There are two things, but again, a total, making it seem as though we're lying on the project, total falsehood, and saying that the delay could come about because we can't raise the money. It's rather hard to see how the project could be completed on time when the $660 million from the US Exim Bank has not been approved. Well, it hasn't been approved, but we are paying From the Treasury, we're meeting all of our commitments to the contractor. We haven't stalled the project or say hold on the project until the loan is approved. I've explained here that the loan will be approved. It will be retroactive financing. And secondly, we have alternatives should this not be approved. But right now we had a good engagement with Exim Bank and we expect it will be approved. So to say because they don't see how this would happen, the timeline for the project, it being completed, because the loan has been approved, is up new thinking, not Stabroek News typical thinking. So but this is an editorial in Stabroek. Again, it's necessary to point this out because so many lies in a single editorial. Then they dealt with, so Jagdeo, two projects that Jagdeo had left, the Skeldon project, which was a brainchild of Jagdeo, and two, that was a failure. And secondly, another failed project was because Jagdeo took a loan for the expansion of the Chedijagan International Airport, which took 11 years to complete. So I got the loan, the project was conceptualized, then I left office, and a number of things happened after that. So on those two projects, I'm going to deal with the Skeldon factory at a major one press conference or in an interview directly to point out that these are the same people who advise you to say that politicians must stay away from making technical decisions. They can do the planning, but they must avoid that. We hired Booker Tate to do the feasibility study for this project. If you go to Booker Tate's website today, you will find that that document is still up there, where they said, it's there. This was posted since the year 2000, I believe, or even just after. It says the government, the Guyana Sugar Corporation approached Booker Tate in 2000 to assist them in developing their sugar industry with the intention of increasing sugar production. It spoke about the project scope and technical. One of the Booker Tate's roles as the client's representative was to provide a comprehensive and detailed factory specification, which incorporated latest designs and technologies. That was their role. We hired the best company in the world at that time with dealing with sugar to do not only the feasibility study, but also to design their factory. Apart from their management contract, we then hired them separately for millions of US dollars as a project manager to oversee the Skeldon factory, to see that the contractor built according to specifications. So they had to give approval for designs, and then they had to ensure that the contractor built according to specification. They were part of the management team when we went out to a public tender. They were part of the evaluation of the public tender. They were part of the selection of the Chinese contractors. The factory failed to perform because there were several things wrong with the design. That Booker Tate, the best company in the world, the politicians stayed away from it. were overseeing that, the project. We filed a lawsuit. We refused to pay them their management fee. They filed a lawsuit against us. We counterclaim, we filed a lawsuit counterclaiming that they were project managers and they were responsible for these failures. We outlined how the factory in many cases failed and they were give approval for the designs. So what happened? The government changed in 2015. Nigel Hughes was their lawyer, Booker Tate lawyer. They won the case where they were directed. We withheld their management fee, and the judge dismissed the counterclaim that they were project managers and they led to the failure. What did APNU do? APNU didn't appeal. We had strong grounds to prove that. All the documents, we would have won a that case. To prove that they were, as project managers, they failed. And they had financial liabilities to it, too. APNU never pursued it. Never pursued it. So we will come back to this. But if anyone has any doubt about this, this was you can easily find the court document, and I would suggest that APNU, the Stabroek News asked APNU why they didn't pursue our claim when we had all of the documents to show that they were responsible for overseeing the project. They were paid by the government as project managers, and they never performed their tasks. Politicians, we didn't know how to design the pump dumper, but the pump dumper failed based on the capacity several times. You had a factory of one magnitude to process X amount of cane, and the pump dumper that they designed was feeding half of the amount of cane into the factory. You could easily Stabroek News, if it was interested in the truth, and it lies about 200 million. There was never 200 million spent on the project. It's 130 million, and that included the 25 million, the over 25 million there for the 25 megawatts of Wärtsilä power that we still use up to today in the plant. A bunch of lies have been told so often about this project, but Stabroek News could easily go to the court document. I want them to ask APNU, since they mentioned this, why didn't they pursue this? Or was it because Stabroek had a benign view of Booker Tate? I remember how they thought they were the saviors of the industry, this benign group that we brought in from abroad. That's one. They asked why 11 years later, after Jagdeo signed the loan, the airport has not been completed. But they forgot that APNU was there for 5 years. But this was the project, and I can say the whole contract, and I'm sharing this with you. This was how the airport was supposed to look when the contract was signed. You see a new terminal. You wouldn't have seen what you're seeing now, the rehab project that they did. This is what the project would have looked like. And this is how you would have had 8 air bridges like this. This is what we paid for as part of the contract when I left, that was negotiated and signed. You ask Patterson how we ended up from this to a rehabilitation project, taking the old building and rehabilitating the old building. We paid for a new building, a massive building with 8 areas, 8 air bridges, a new apron, a new highway, runway. Why don't they ask Patterson how it got to this? And when we got back into office, we refused to accept the airport. We refused to accept it, what APNU had done. And as a result of that, they are working now on improving the entire facade of the airport and also adding 2 new air bridges for the airport at their own cost because we refuse to accept it. So you should ask Patterson, the same man who is lying on Norton. I think I saw the big thing about this reshuffle. And I wonder what's this shadow reshuffle. Because a lot of the people are waste moving to another waste position. It's just really, they're not going to make any difference. It's hopeless people moving to another portfolio. But in Patterson's case, he wants to play the victim. Oh, I spoke about some ring fencing, and I gave an interview on ring fencing, and I believe I might be victimized because of this by Norton and placed in Public Works. He should thank Norton for still putting him at Public Works. Actually, I'm just thinking, if I place myself in Norton's position, this is a hard thing to do, and I just cringed when I said it. But, if I, like we believe in a make-believe world and stuff like that. So, Patterson says something like this, and I'm thinking, this guy has no integrity. It was his party that signed the PSA. He defended the PSA. It was his party where one of the general secretary, I think at that time of his party, was listed on Exxon's, his law office was listed on the PSA as their local office. It was Trotman who, contrary to all the advice, rushed to sign this PSA. It was Trotman and the AFC who allowed Exxon to draft the cabinet paper approving the contract. Not a word in 5 years, they defended the contract. And now to say, oh, let's renegotiate or ring fence. Why, if they thought ring fencing was so important, why didn't they include it? Why didn't he say that when the contract came to the cabinet? Was ring fencing included? What role did he play in that cabinet, this Patterson, when the contract did go to cabinet? From what we got, in fact, the cabinet paper approving the contract, but drafted by Exxon went to the cabinet. Why didn't he do that then? So Norton has to deal with, is between a rock and a hard place, to deal with a man who has no integrity and who has been charged in his tenure at Public Works for corruption on several counts. I told you about one, the one what he's earlier in the press conference. He was also charged for awarding contract to their advisor for supply of scales that never came here. We know now that people were buying gold jewelry for him from when he was Minister of Public Works agency under him. And Norton had to decide where to put him. And Norton had to put him back again at Public Works. Imagine a person, unprecedented in our history, that has all of these valid, real charges against him, not trumped up charges, that could be substantiated. In this shadow cabinet, he now goes back to the same portfolio that he was accused of corruptly managing, apart from the incompetence. So I guess Norton was pressured to do this, but he must have had a hard time between lack of integrity and the charges for corruption and public works. So you think it's the Figueroa matter that is really saying, anyhow, with shadow cabinet, they would remain shadow for a very long time in the future. Shadow for a very, very, very long time. And so this is an important issue. But I want to come back. So this editorial here, I hope that Stabrook would do the due diligence and ask how a project that was signed for this building ended up with us receiving that one. Because this is what, when I was president and when I left, and that we were supposed to get. And then APNU took it over, and it remained so until APNU 2015. The changes were made in that period. But they would avoid accountability. They don't have to answer for anything. They don't have to answer for the $1 billion missing on the Durban Park. Stabrook is not concerned about that. That project moved with a great speed, no delay there. It was a fantastic project, no delay whatsoever. And this one on Skeldon, there are questions too. But we'll come back to Skeldon in another form, because they like to talk about the political issues. And they on the budget issues now, the president has spoken a lot about the budget. Budget will be next week. And as you know, so Mr. Norton today said the obligatory things, like the same things generally that you would say over and over. Oh, they have a plan. Their plan is people-centered. Or they're going to do more on everything under the sun. Everything under the sun. But his great financial wizard, must be whispering in his ears that he could do all of these things without regard for accountability or long-term planning. I've gone through that many times. We have a different approach to managing the affairs of the country, one that is planned and well thought out. So clearly you are going to see the continuation of infrastructure, as we said before, of different nature. You're going to see economic infrastructure continuing, projects that will expand our productive capacity. You will see support for industries. You will see social infrastructure, that's community roads, health centers, the health facilities, education facilities, recreational facilities, large amounts being done in the communities themselves. You will see more help to vulnerable groups, significant support to children, women, elderly. There are specific initiatives that would tackle those in a major way that you will see. You're going to continue to see support for job creation and expansion of job creation. So I'm not going to get into specifics because a lot have been mentioned, things that are ongoing by the president, and and the Minister of Finance will get into the details of that. But I can just assure you that Monday will continue to support the same progressive annual accumulation of wealth and welfare to the citizens of the country that we've embarked upon since we reassumed office. So it will be supported there. I'm tempted to just end it there because there are lots of other things, but today I'm going to end it short. So thank you very much. Yeah, sure. So again, this is the same issue. I think what the young lady is saying is that Norton said they promised free education before university education before 2015. Now, if you look at the promises, that's why I wanted to go through today some of the promises that they made again, but I think people are going to stone me to say, oh, you've spoken about this so many times. But if you go through the promises, you would see that most of the promises they made in 2015, they didn't keep. That's why we campaigned on the local government elections on promises that they're untrustworthy. That's the word you associate with APNU, untrustworthy. You can never believe anything they say. They will say things that sound good to people, conveniently. Patterson now talking about ring fencing. Trotman now talking about renegotiating contract. Now talking about helping children. Now concerned about pensioners. Now concerned about water, health care. When they had the opportunity to do it, nothing. They didn't do it. That was not their priority. Talking about giving land to house lots to people, now they're concerned about it. They're concerned about everything under the sun now. So in the similar vein that I've dealt with, the Linden Road, they were thinking about doing the Linden Road, paving the Linden Road. Well, they were thinking about doing it, but it's in 2023 that we got a loan to do it. And we have already pre-qualified the contractors, and we're waiting to open now the final bids. The bids will come in from the pre-qualified contractors, so we will actually pave the road this year. They were thinking about doing it. This was their stronghold going up to Linden. They thought about it, but that's the end of the matter. They couldn't even say, in fact, they said they left a loan with us. I don't know where they left this loan. Maybe it's in Patterson's pocket. So the loan there, but only in 2023, we got this loan from the Islamic Development Bank for $200 million to pave that road from the Susdike Junction into Linden. It's a massive investment. And that came in 2023. So the same thing with education too, free university education. We now have to work out the details of how we ensure that people who have taken loans, that we ensure or they also have relief, so they don't have to repay the loan. So effectively, if they don't have to repay the loans, what does this mean? It means from the very first year that we got into office, we have actually implemented a free education. Now, there are some people who've been paying who may be disadvantaged because they have paid, But for those who have not paid, you have effectively or given them the free education because they're not going to pay their loans. So it has a retroactive application. And we had to do that because financially we knew that we were progressing. So by the outer years in the 5-year term, that's why we promised within 5 years we'd be able to make the cash injection into the university, having dealt with people who had acquired loans and are required to repay it, getting them relief before. So it is a studied policy. We don't do things because of just off the top of our head. And so effectively, the policy has been in place because the moment we decided that we're going to make this retroactive by not or giving a waiver for those who have not paid and who have served our country, then you've effectively implemented the policy of free education. And that apart, so he talks a lot about that, but apart from doing that, we have 20-something thousand people who have a scholarship from the government too. I don't hear him talking much about that. Did he promise that too? If they promise free scholarships to everyone, how come only the ministers and their families got scholarship in the 5 years period? And you don't want me to list the ministers again and their families. Large sums of money. One minister's children got $30 million. Just imagine $30 million for a single and the minister, two kids, and they were not Guyana scholars. They were not Guyana scholars. So Guyana scholars, that's a different thing. The achievement when people do well should pay whatever. But how many students could have gone to UG? What's the annual fee like? Well, APNU raised it. APNU actually raised the fees in the 5 years. So APNU raised university fees in the 5 years. That's an inconvenient truth to Norton too. But you could have probably had maybe, and times the 300 people go, maybe 250 persons go to the University of Guyana on an annual basis, get a scholarship for the same price that 2 kids from one minister got, who are now Guyana scholars. That was APNU's record. So it's pure nonsense, but they're worried about the impact of it on people. They're worried that people may somehow have a better view of the PPP, that people who they've been lying to all their lives might have a better view of the PPP. They have no genuine concern. If APNU were to win in the future, none of these promises would be fulfilled. I'm telling you. None of them. They just do that conveniently to use people.
The opposition is also... The opposition has claimed that there has been no increase in food production in several regions, namely Regions 1, some parts of Regions 4, Region 7, and 10. What is your response to this? And could you possibly share some of the major initiatives that were undertaken by the government?
So again, it's a racist kind of thing. So no major increase in food production in 7, 10, and 1. Well, the 2 regions are controlled by APNU. The thing is that we've supported more agricultural initiatives in 10, in 7, and 1 that APNU ever supported anywhere in the country. That's a fact, the first fact, that we've supported more agricultural initiatives. You talk to people in the Berbice River, in the Demerara River, or Linden itself properly, the support on D&I and agriculture. They've had more support on agriculture. That was the government that increased land fees at MMA, talking about agriculture today, by moving from $3,500 per acre for land and water charges to $15,000 per acre per annum. Now, that's the same government that removed taxes or added taxes to machinery and equipment for agriculture, pesticides, fertilizers, etc. Granger said to the rice farmers, you can't expect any support from the government. This is a private industry. The 7,000 agricultural workers, sugar workers were sent off. So credibility on agriculture is a poor thing again. It's a zero credibility on agriculture. Last week or the week before, I was telling you about the need for greater extension services to a lot of these regions. When we're in Region 1, for example, we are looking at the possibility of upgrading now the terminals in Region 1, the wharves, so we can ship directly into the Caribbean. We're sending better breeding stocks into the region. In the last 2 years, it's over 7,000 swines that we've done, breeding animals that we've done distributed alone. That's only pigs. But I can go through the long list of stuff. And in Region 1, planting material was the big issue. Suckers and stuff like that when we went on the ground. So you have to work with the local communities. Often we've had some tough situations, like in the villages and food security. Like I met with the two Shaws. They had the drought killed off a lot of their crops. One time in Budgetary and Rio and all these places in 9, the floods damaged all their planting material and crops. We had to import planting material from Brazil. So it's a tough situation in these areas too. A lot of them don't have, and they don't export their agricultural products. They utilize it mainly for subsistence purposes in these regions. But our work has been to bolster production in all of these areas. So what Norton is saying is nonsense. Nonsense, again. Yes. Yes, Kaichurani? Okay, I see your gentleman.
Hi, good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo. Shervin. Just some clarity in what you said about Norton and Patterson. Just some clarity. Do you support Norton's decision to move someone that has been so vocal in the oil and gas sector, given that you have said many times before that people can change even if they have a past?
Yeah, but you have to change view with credibility. You cannot do it conveniently. I think Patterson's character, in my view, this is my opinion of him, he has demonstrated that he is like a yo-yo. And that his views now on ring fencing are convenient because he gets free publicity by the Kaichor News. Anybody who talks a couple of words like ring fencing, Kaichor News will get a vagrant off the street and give him and say he's a specialist if he speaks about ring fencing, interest rate for the projects. If they talk about renegotiation, they would go and scrape the bottom of the barrel for anybody. And so publicity, AFC has thrived on that. People like Ramjatan and Patterson. I remember in the period leading up to the 2015 elections, some of them, Glenn Lal boasted that he used to take them home by him and school them. That they had to be schooled by Glenn Lal, and then in exchange his newspaper gave them a favorable view. I don't know if they're doing that. He's doing the schooling at home again, but but clearly the favorable view is there. So I think it's convenient. It's convenient. He has no credibility in doing so. So people can change views credibly so, but he can't do it.
My second question, the government has been handing out grants and so forth last year and has, as you have said in past, doing its best to reduce poverty in the country. But there are still some folks who experience poverty. Recently, in an interview on Kaicho Radio, one man said his child had to walk 1 mile from his home in Vigilance North to his primary school, and also had to, help sell some stuff to make ends meet. Some folks complain of not having bus fare to send their children to school. What do you have to say to these folks as you begin a new year, 2024?
So, you recall when I spoke of this matter here, because the Kaichor News has been framing this. We are a rich country now, yet we have poor people. We are a rich country, but we have poor people. We're collecting remittances from abroad to feed ourselves, and we are a rich country. So when I dealt with this matter, I explained that if we work hard, we will get wealthier. We'd be able to end unemployment in Guyana totally. We have managed to get 50, 60,000 people working back again since we got into office. But we still have pockets of unemployment in a country that has started producing oil, just started now, in infancy stage of production. So that's the goal, to get everyone employed. And this is why I explained to you further that we haven't had the mass immigration before, because people will say, how come you're allowing like mass immigration of workers here and we still have people who are unemployed? So we have to have a nuanced policy on immigration to allow some of the workers for big projects so they don't compete with the labor, like in Region 4, where we already have scarce labor. So I explained that. I explained that we still have pockets of poverty in the country. We never claim we've eliminated that totally. We never claimed that. But where have we come from over the years? The Ramprakash study said in the 80s, 87% of our people was living below the poverty line. Today, that figure has come down significantly. And because of our work. So we continue to work towards this as a goal. And that is why we believe that we must do a number of things. That poor people need good quality education. They need access to education to get out of poverty. Free education at the university, the online program, the oil and gas training college that we're building. We're saying now, if you want a job in healthcare or to go for training, anybody, we will take you in and train you. So training opportunities so people can get a skill, and that's the first way of getting out of poverty. 2, getting a job so they can get more. So we are working at creating more jobs. Where we haven't succeeded immediately in getting full-time jobs, we're putting part-time jobs, but it's making a big difference to the lives of those people if you talk to them who are getting the part-time jobs. Single mothers, etc. We have 85% of the 15-odd thousand people on the part-time jobs are women. So it's making a difference to them at that level. 3rd, healthcare. We're expanding healthcare so people don't have to pay, or it's getting cheaper, better quality care. So our aim now to do a CT scan in a public hospital, in all the hospitals that we're building, the 12 hospitals, would obviate the need for someone to come from, say, Essecubo to do a CT scan in Georgetown, and they wouldn't have to pay for it. Now, most likely, they would have to pay for it. That's why investment in that area too. So it's not just about one thing. And low-income housing, when people have access to a plot of land, it costs us now maybe 4 times more than we're selling the plot of land for to develop it. But it's a transfer of wealth from the treasury to these individuals, Guyanese individuals, and a lot of them poor. So we're tackling this comprehensively. When we decided to increase, and you're going to see some of the initiatives in the budget this year too, supporting that view. That's why the children grant. Now we know that when this issue of buses came about, Granger, and he had 12 buses or whatever, 30 buses, and put his name. It was only for a few areas. They discontinued the grant, the $10,000 grant. We pointed out that in the 5 years, at $1.6 billion, if they kept it at 10,000, that's $8 billion that would have been transferred to the pockets of the children to help people with things like transportation, etc. So now it's 8.6 billion per year. It will go to about over 10 billion maybe this year. So imagine 10 billion per year going to the parents, every school child, to assist with things like transport. It's not to cover it totally, but to assist. That is how we are tackling this, by giving back to the children of our country. They had zero under APNU for all the 5 years. They're going to get about 10 billion per year now. Well, every year. So that helps them back. So that's what I said. But if they're 1 mile is tough to walk for a child, depending on the age. But I've seen going into the hinterland. I'm just driving from, I think we're campaigning, or no, it might be more recently, going into Matthews Ridge. So I came at the airport and I'm driving into Matthews Ridge, and I see these kids walking along this long, hot, dusty road. They walk for miles and miles to get to school, because in the indigenous communities, they live very far. And it's the commitment of these children that matters. And we have to do everything we can to alleviate it. We had kids who would paddle 4 miles to school because of where they live in the hinterland. Sometimes on the coast, we take things for granted too. We're close to educational institution and we complain. It's the commitment of the parents to send their kids because they want a better life. So it's not just government's responsibility, it's your responsibility. I know how poor families work. They sacrifice to get their kids good education and stuff like that. But if there any specific person who needs any help, we would help them. They can go in and seek help for their kids. We have a program like that. So if you know of any specific person who needs help, then, and the child can't go to school because they can't, they really need something, then we'd help that child to go to school too. But the overall policy is to tackle poverty. And it is not, we never claim that we've ended poverty. And we are not a rich country as yet. If you look at our financial program, only England Lyle's said. Yes.
A question. President Ali had recently said in an interview, he had described the ongoing actions in Gaza as televised genocide. Given the depiction that he gave, should Guyana still continue diplomatic relations with Israel?
So there are lots of countries around the world who have described the situation as genocide or nearing genocide, who have not withdrawn diplomatic ties with Israel. South Africa has filed a case before the ICJ claiming that they want provisional measures against Israel to prevent a genocide. South Africa only withdrew its diplomats from Israel. It has not had them for a while, but it withdrew its diplomat. We don't have diplomats accredited to Israel. So most countries have not taken the step of broken off diplomatic ties formally, but, well, not most, but some countries, but they have withdrawn diplomatic representation to that country. We don't have anyone. I confirmed again before today and with Todd, and we don't have any ties with anyone accredited to Israel. I suspect a number of countries may still be preserving diplomatic relations with Israel, because Israel, I believe, needs to understand that the only way that they would have long-term security, which they should have too, within their own borders, if there is a two-state solution. And almost the entire world supports that, and I think that they have to continue through diplomatic as well as other channels impress upon Israel that it should be open to the immediate discussion on this issue of a two-state solution. The Palestinian people have to have an independent state so they can live in dignity, peace, and to be able to grow their children in a condition of freedom and without fear that they would suffer the atrocities that are currently being committed on them. Yes, please.
Samuel Skeldon, NCM News. Dr. Jagdeo, based on Mr. Norton's comment to the press conference, he said, "We expect the 2024 budget to be more of the same, infrastructure over people." How do you respond to that?
Well, if more of the same means we're going to continue to support our children that they're treated so despicably, then yes. And if it means that we're going to continue to fulfill our promises to the pensioners to double their pension by 2025, then the answer is yes, it's more of the same. And if it will continue to support the expansion of health care, then the answer is yes. Or more scholarships to people? Yes. And if it will continue to build recreational facilities for people in their communities, sporting facilities, community roads, yes, the answer is yes. So it's more of the same. If your path is a progressive one, more of the same is good. It's when you have a destructive path like they did and no plan, more of the same is bad. And so that is more of the same here is a compliment from Norton, because we've been doing the things that people want, the things we promise them first of all, and the things that when we go out, they say, these are our priorities. So that's a compliment from Norton. I wish to thank him for it.
You said previously that more than 80% of the manifesto promises have been delivered.
90-something% now of the manifesto promises. But like some are ongoing, so we will get to the doubling of old age pension by 2025, so complete it then, and then all of the other things. So we are, when we're campaigning, you're gonna see this. I'm telling you now, we're gonna campaign on what we did, what we promised and what we did. So even the cheaper electricity and the gas to energy project, Marcel, we'll campaign on that too. Mr. Broker is not too happy about that. So, yes, okay. Here and then Dennis.
So I would like to ask about insurance. I'm kidding, not insurance.
Insurance?
I'm kidding. Kaitra News. Anyway, continuing with the budget.
Okay, now I get you.
The last few budgets were funded without any new taxes. Can you confirm that you're continuing along this line? And as General Secretary, is there any major thing that your party wanted that could not have been funded in this government, in this budget? And my second question is relating to this thing in Stabrook News about the shortage of equipment amongst contractors. This is something that Guyana Standard has heard about as well. Has government been able to confirm this? And if this is accurate, is any measure in the pipeline to address this so that local contractors can remain in the game, but we don't have to suffer the backlog of these projects?
So I can confirm, because I wouldn't have done it because I let the minister say it, but it has been a trend of the PPP governments. And we also, this is something we promise in our local government campaign, no new taxes, but I can say that even at the national level, that there will be no new taxes. The second issue is the shortage of equipment. Now, I've spoken to people who have come here, large numbers of people, to say they bought a lot of equipment, they're tendering, they're not getting work. And I say, they got to keep tendering. So they're claiming overcapacity. And so that is news to me. Now, equipment I'm talking about, equipment. So first of all, equipment. We have had, if you talk to Macor or anybody who's been importing the heavy-duty equipment or trucks or cranes, there was a time we didn't have a crane. Maybe now in 2020 we probably have one. Now we have about 14 cranes in the country that can put up high-rise buildings. Hundreds of new trucks, large numbers of new trucks have come in the country. The heavy-duty equipment, excavators, etc. So I don't think, I saw the Stabrook thing about the shortage of equipment, but they were relating it to some of these projects, like the Harbor Bridge and the Linden's Mabura Road. I don't think those suffer from a lack of equipment. So material, on the other hand, initially we had a problem with quarry products. And I explained that how the prices, a couple of weeks ago, how the prices had gone up. But very early we gave new licenses to a large number. Almost anyone who came in and applied got a quarry license, about 10 persons or 10 companies, of which about 6 have started producing with massive amounts of investment, tens of millions of US dollars. So even the Linden Mabura Road should have it easier because you have a lot of stone in those areas that could be crushed easily. And I know the supply has improved dramatically through imports and also local production, so much so that the prices have abated a bit. We still have big demand for sand and the increase in prices, but not a shortage as such. So I don't see this right now as a trend. Some people have, so some of the delays are, these are very complex projects too. Often when you're constructing, like if you're constructing the road, the Ogle Road to the bypass to get to the Eccles area, they have a particular technology where they have to, in 2 years, they have to prepare a soil and stabilize the soil so that the road doesn't shift and what is effectively a swamp. So if you go into these areas, they're laying, or even at the gas to energy project, thousands of wick drains with technology and a lot of these things. So don't underestimate the complexity of a lot of these big projects. So sometimes there are real issues. Shortage of labor is, in some cases, we've heard about shortage of labor. And we're trying to allow people to bring in some of their labor, especially on the foreign-funded projects, those, so that they don't have to compete with local labor. So I don't see that so much now. A little earlier it was like that, but it is started to abate, but there may be individuals. So individual contractors may have this problem, like a shortage of equipment. But if you look at the system, I don't see it as part of the system. And then there was the party. No, the party worked on the manifesto. Remember, we work on this manifesto when we're in opposition. So we know what's in the manifesto. We knew the state of the affairs of the Treasury. We had our own internal forecasting systems. We didn't operate like APNO. I don't think at Congress Place they will ever forecast what revenue will be in the outer years. So they can talk off the top of their head, like Elson Lowe saying you can fund the salary increases from interest payment on the NRF. And then Peeping Tom supported him, which is nonsense. It doesn't make sense. So they don't do that. But we did a lot of that internally. So when we presented our manifesto, we knew we could accomplish it. So we are only in the discussions now. There are lots of things that we did not promise in our manifesto that we are doing now. And you will see in the new budget things that will enhance welfare of people. So we are not limiting ourselves to the benefits of the promise that we made in the manifesto alone. So this is the kind of interactive discussion. So I have the good fortune of being in the cabinet as well as General Secretary of the party. So there is no conflict here whatsoever between party and government. But we do a lot of our own internal work. So when we go to a discussion, we know what we want, because from the party level, we have our ears on the ground too. What touches people most, what their concerns are, that sort of thing, and especially children and those sorts of things. Yeah, thank you.
And party business. I wanted to know if the party has started discussions yet on the Congress, which you said would be held before the end of this first quarter, if a date has been floated or anything to that effect.
Yes, the party central committee met. So the executive met last Saturday, and they decided that I think it's the first week of May that the Congress would be held.
Mr. Jagdeo, Ganesh Shabal, sir, could you say what is the current status with respect to negotiations with the oil companies that have recently been awarded the blocks? And secondly, is your party courting or thinking of courting Mr. German Figueroa?
Every week you come with something, Dennis. That I don't know, you may be, like there might be a rogue party member telling you tales which are not true, but just misleading you. Okay, no, so let me answer you. So the first question is, what was it? I met with the minister and he said that the firms were requested to supply additional information, that the information will come in by the end of this month, beyond which they will hopefully be able to conclude these arrangements. So Minister, you can follow up with him, but he said that the deadline for the submission of additional information is the end of the month.
What are these types of additional
remember
information?
I said to you that we assessed the proposals on the basis of a number of criteria. Our consultants did too. So now we have to verify that what were in those proposals. So we ranked them based on what people said. And then we decided to award. But the final sign-off we have to do the due diligence to see what was in the proposal that won the bid. The companies can meet those obligations and they have the wherewithal to address those issues. So that is where we are now, because you recall someone was saying that there might be one individual. I think you asked me that question. Someone asked me a question that there was some individual who was a former honorary consul for, I think Marcel asked me that question, for a country that may be part of a proposal. And I said, at this stage, we have to do verification of a number of things, that the source of funds have to be legal and everything of that sort. So you still have that work to be done. On the issue of Figueroa, I don't know if this has anything to do with his removal from this Jumbie, what, cabinet? Yeah, it's ghost cabinet, call it ghost cabinet. So the ghost cabinet is like, could be rumors. As General Secretary of the party, we've never had any such engagement with Figueroa about joining the PPP. And I don't want, the APNU has a way, I think Mr. Figueroa has been critical of this decision, saying it's undemocratic. I don't want it to be used that somehow, because APNU has this quick way of using the PPP as the bogeyman. You know, we knew he was discussing something with the PPP, therefore this was punishment for that kind of engagement. Let me say categorically that has not happened. No. So the answer is no. He is not been formally or informally by me requested to be part of the People's Progressive Party.
Going back to the oil question, sir, has any of the companies expressed any degree of apprehension about going forward in light of what we had been seeing in the last few weeks?
No, we are.
Or have they sought clarifications on any matter related to?
Not that I'm aware of. You could verify further from Vic, but no such concern was brought to my level. Not a single one. Yes. You get, please use the mic here. Oh, you want it? Oh,
I'm sorry.
Hello? Oh.
yes.
Given your workload, this is following up on Marcel's question. Given your workload, do you plan to continue as General Secretary of the party after Congress?
We have a democratic process to elect a General Secretary. So it would be presumptuous of me to say I will continue as General Secretary. It's like, I don't already determined. I'll decide whether I'll contest. I will contest at that time. I will decide as contest. But right now, I'm General Secretary until those elections are held. But it would be presumptuous to say I continue like, I own this party. No. That's what I said at that point in time. At that point in time, you will know. But I'm General Secretary until that point in time.
I'm just seeking clarity on the figure.
Yeah, go ahead.
You said, as General Secretary, you have no knowledge of the BBC reporting Mr. Figueroa at this time?
Yes.
All right, good afternoon. Kiana Wilbur, Kaiser News. 3 questions. Regarding the MOU with India, part of it states that they will assist in Guyana, helping Guyana with the development of a framework for regulation. I was wondering if you can shed some light on that, given that the government is already in that direction. So what more do you expect them to bring to the table? Regarding gas, can you say what percentage of the Wales gas project is completed? And the project has the 2025 starting time, and in 2025 as well, we have another major project coming online, which is Yellowtail. The EIA for that project states that there's a lot of excess gas, and ExxonMobil has suggested that possibly Guyana can export or do another gas to energy project. Has government decided as yet with the gas strategy, what would be?
Hold on a minute. So India, it's regulation.
Yes.
Yellowtail gas strategy again, right?
Yes. So after the MOU aspect, I asked about the percentage of the Wales project that's completed, and what are the plans for the excess gas from Yellowtail, given that that also starts in 2025. I'll ask the other question after that.
Okay. So I see the building out a regulatory framework for the oil and gas sector as ongoing. It involves drafting new pieces of legislation. So, for example, the Petroleum Activities Bill, we are now drafting regulations to those. In several areas, you have to have environmental safety regulations, etc. That those have to be promulgated or laid in Parliament also. So they give effect to the provisions of the Act, the Core Act. So there's still a lot of detailed work that needs to be done on strengthening the framework for better regulating the sector. And capacity building is a crucial part of it too. So we believe that a number of countries can help us in this regard. Whilst we have not determined a specific form of support from India yet, but they have a number of good, solid technical people who could be deployed at the EPA, in the ministry. But we're not limiting ourselves to help from India alone. We have accepted and received help from Ghana in the past on specific issues, Qatar, a number of countries that have capacity. So we don't see the MOU of help on regulation and the regulatory environment, creating the framework, that it conflicts with what we're doing. In fact, this is an ongoing task. It's not going to be completed immediately. The gas strategy, the pipeline, I can't give you the exact percentage. Just yesterday, I spoke with the people from Lenseca. We had another meeting, large meeting. So I was asking them specifically about that. And they told me about the work that's being done on stabilizing the ensuring foundation, because you don't have to, you have to ensure that there's no movement, that the turbines that Starbuck News editorial said we don't have money for, they're already ordered and they arrive here by April of next year. Thank you. That they'd arrive by April of next year. So it's ongoing. I can't calculate the percentage. So because some issues take more time and they're more complex, etc. But I know that the work is taking place in earnest from our side and from the contractor's side, and they're optimistic that the project will be done safely, credibly, and come in within the reasonable timeline. So that's on it. On the yellowtail, etc. So we're doing work on the completion of the gas strategy. Now, all of the comments we've received from the public have been deposited with our consultants, etc. And they're working to expand that discussion paper that went out, basically. That will be completed at some point in time. With this week or next week, you're going to see the request for proposal along the lines that I explained last week, that we're not awaiting the completion of the overall gas strategy. We believe that a lot of these, the excess gas, in not just Yellowtail, but other places, that right now we need to bring in, we have demand for the full capacity of the pipeline, which is, depending on who assesses it, but between 120 to 130 million cubic per day. But so we're only bringing in 50. So Exxon has to give a commitment to find another 80 million cubic per day to put in that pipeline to bring in, which we can also monetize. So if we monetize that, the 80 million additional cubic, the project economics that I mentioned to you, where we could probably, for the liquids, repay almost the entire cost of the project, it would even shift even more dramatic in our favor, in a favorable fashion, if we can utilize all the gas. So definitely we're looking at this, and the discussions would have to entail how we utilize this gas. They would want, no doubt, to do reinjection. Yes, go ahead.
You said at previous press conferences that on the matter of ring fencing, the government position is that you will forego revenues now so that future projects will be fast-tracked. But what mechanisms, if it's the audit, for example, do you have in place to ensure, one, ExxonMobil is not abusing this privilege that the government is allowing them to have, for example, charging interest on the money that we're foregoing, or abusing us in some other type of manner? Is this something that you have your eyes on?
Yes, because if it's going to fund project. That means it's coming from the cost bank, from money that's not allocated as profit. So then you can't have an interest charge on it. There cannot be an interest charge on it. And so this is the purpose of the audit. The audits look at these things. As I conceded before, that this is all done in a ex post. But there is no interest to be charged on money coming out from the cost bank.
Okay. Good afternoon, Vice President Kim Walking from Oil Now. So the IMF recently put out its for consultation report on Guyana and gave generally positive reviews. Sometimes when these multilateral financial institutions like the World Bank and the IMF give projections, because of the rapid pace at which the economy is advancing by virtue of oil, sometimes the statistics can be startling. There's a particular one I'm hoping you could help me put into perspective. The IMF, which did that report, has made projections toward 2028. And according to the IMF, by 2028, there will not be a single country in the world that has a higher GDP per capita based on purchasing power parity than Guyana. Does that make sense? Can you put that into perspective?
Yeah.
As an economist.
Our per capita GDP will get up above $30,000 US, which in nominal terms is not the highest per capita GDP in the world. There are several countries, developed countries, that would still have higher nominal per capita GDP. The United States of America has over $70,000 per capita GDP. We will definitely be the highest in a nominal sense in the Caribbean and one of the highest in the region or among developing countries. But what happens is that the purchasing power parity has been a concept developed by the international community and has been used widely now by the multilaterals to assess goods and services that you can purchase from one nominal dollar. So if you can buy this basket of goods from $1 in, or this teacup, well, this is not teacup, this is this big cup here, for $1 in the US. But you can buy two of the same cup for a US dollar, a nominal US dollar in Guyana. Then the purchasing power parity will be double that of the US. So it says if your 30,000 US dollars in nominal terms, GDP, your purchasing power parity GDP will be 60,000 US dollars. And so that is how it's done. So on that ground, it's likely that they are accurate.
Could it be also that because oil, the economic activity from oil takes up such a great share in the economy, that these numbers may not necessarily be representative of the purchasing power of the average Guyanese citizen?
Yes, it is. It speaks the concept. That is why an understanding of the concept is so vital. The concept doesn't speak about distribution of wealth. even the concept of nominal GDP. It seeks to measure it's the aggregate of goods and services produced in the economy for a single year, that is GDP. It speaks nothing about distribution, that's nominal GDP. So the purchasing power, nominal GDP or purchasing power parity doesn't speak. You could have high rates of poverty, you could have poverty in a country that has a higher purchasing power parity. So that doesn't necessarily mean there's high inequality. The high inequality is measured by something called the Gini coefficient. The Gini coefficient measures inequality in income levels. So this region has often, like Latin America, has had high Gini coefficients. In our case here, you will have differentiation, but when you look at poverty level, that's why you have to measure income in different ways. So if you heard what we said before, given what we know here, and given the oil and gas industry operating in an enclavic way, you've heard me said that before. Enclavic meaning it's not fully integrated into our domestic economy, because the FPSOs come, they're offshore, the workers go offshore, produce oil offshore, the oil gets shipped to another country, then a financial flow arises there, and we're getting the residual net for some of local services produced here. Now the oil, another sector, say agriculture, which is fully grounded here, operates in a more integrated fashion and has more spin-off benefits. So how have we sought to integrate this economy more with our local economy, or to remedy the enclavic nature? That is through the local content law. That is why we've been thinking this through, and the local content law forces them now to spend more, not through revenue stream to the Treasury. That doesn't change because of the PSA. But what changes is their spending and the quantum of spending and in the local economy, because by law, they now have to buy or procure services, whether it's labor services or a whole range of other services and goods from locals. So that is how you make it more integrated and you balance some of the flows here. So that is why I said to you, we are in such an early period, we've tackled this very contentious issue that other countries have seen by further integrating more resources being spent into the local economy. And that helps with more distribution, greater flow and greater income levels. Distribution of wealth. It's not just distribution of income, but national wealth now. So when you see the GDP now, more and more of the GDP now is coming from domestic sources, because the goods and services are produced by our people, not a French company supplying the food here, or not a French company doing the security services, but a Guyanese-owned company using Guyanese laborers to provide the quality of the services. If it's a French company, in our balance of payment figures or balance of payment, you will see it recorded as an outflow to some extent, a payment for factor. So there are concepts between gross domestic GDP, gross domestic production, and gross national or gross domestic income and gross national income. So let me get back to it. The key thing is is, yes, so it doesn't speak about distribution. Of wealth. In the United States of America, you have 30 million people living below the poverty line. Below the poverty line. Millions of people illiterate. This is a country with a $72,000 per capita GDP. Millions without access to health care. Millions without access. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands homeless. And Dennis, you had an epiphany there, or you just cough? Yeah. So and that's a country with a $72,000 per capita GDP. And that's in a nominal sense. Thank you.
Reuters recently reported that Guyana and India are supposed to sign a 5-year MOU so they can work on diversifying their oil imports. What changed? Is Guyana going to sign that MOU with India?
Yes, and this MOU is not any different than the one we were discussing almost a year ago. It had to go to the Indian cabinet. Now, what is part of the MOU doesn't speak about any specific lift and any sale of our oil to India would have to, as we made public some time ago, and even the Indian High Commissioner confirmed, would have to be commercially beneficial to Guyana. So it's an MOU to cooperate in this area, to explore the possibility of sale directly to India, but it has to be on commercial terms. But there is no specific volume or timeline for any such agreement in the MOU.
Finally, the government several years ago had given ExxonMobil a green light to conduct a carbon capture study so it could incorporate useful findings into its operations. Are you able to provide an update on what has transpired in that regard?
I don't think several years ago. I think last year we did, right? But time is moving so fast, so you could be right. I've not seen the findings of the study as yet, but definitely in the future. Both the technology and will be vital. The technology for the FPSOs will have to ensure that we reduce our carbon footprint. And globally, if you saw the head of Exxon speaking globally, just recently he was saying that climate change is real, that the world suffers from this overhang. At one time, Exxon tried to deny that climate change was real. He also confirmed that climate change is caused by anthropogenic action or worsened by anthropogenic action. Those are two key positions for the head of Exxon globally to confirm. He said that the oil and gas companies have to address emissions, and he spoke about their successes and their investment in carbon capture and storage. So I suspect that that's part of their global strategy in the future, particularly when there's a price for carbon, to deal with carbon capture and storage, something that we support. We support the use of technology to also do that, to be one of the tools to achieve net zero. Sure.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo and William Skytree News. Just 3 quick questions. Firstly, the owners of the Jamaica Talawas has resold franchise back to the CPL, citing the lack of financial sustainability. There have been charges and counter-charges about the support to the team given by the Jamaican government. Can you say whether the government of Guyana has pumped monies directly or indirectly into the Amazon Warriors franchise? And if so, can you provide us with an estimated amount? Secondly, how do you respond to criticisms that instead of building a 12-story headquarters for the police at Brickdam, the government could have used much of the same money to improve existing stations and build new ones where needed? And lastly, relatedly, has there been any study to justify the construction of the 6 new hospitals that are being built by our government and the locations which they're going to be placed at?
So let's start with the Amazon Warriors. There is no financial transfer from the Treasury to the Amazon Warriors that I know of. We don't have a budgetary provision for it, and there's been no financial transfer to the Amazon Warriors from the budget. Whether we had a study to do the 6 hospitals before we started building them to see if they're needed. So I saw the Starbuck News questioning in another editorial hospitals too, questioning about all these hospitals and stuff. So it's the same thing that's been coming. Now clearly, if you look at, it's not 6 hospitals. It's actually 12 hospitals to be built, new hospitals, and possibly another 6 hospitals for substantial rehabilitation. So it's not 6. So what motivated the government to pursue this investment path? Now, first of all, if you look at our manifesto, we said that oil and gas resources will be spent in a number of ways, and we've remained consistent with that. For infrastructure, we said that in 2020 actually, not now. Healthcare, education, vulnerable groups, and to support other industries, and saving some for the future. We did not wait until we got back into government. We outlined where we will be spending the resources. Because we believe that if you have healthy people, if you have educated people, if you have a diversified economy, that even in the post-oil and gas era, our country would continue doing extremely well. And to have a diversified economy, you have to have supporting infrastructure of an economic nature, etc. And we believe that vulnerable groups needed help. So we outlined that. That's the master plan. But we've also decided that we want to redefine primary health care. We wanted to ensure that it's easier for people across this country to have access to better quality health care. So if you look at the hospitals that we are building, the hospital in Skeldon is replaced by a hospital, I think at number 35 or something, 5 there, just in the Skeldon area. It's a replacement hospital. The Skeldon hospital now it can't suit the needs of the people there in that area, can't provide the services. These 6 hospitals, $30 million US each. One there, one at Bath Settlement in Region 5, Fort Wellington upgrade, one at Enmore, so just to replace the Enmore Polyclinic, one at Diamond to replace the existing facility at Diamond, then one at Dekendron, because Region 3 now is the second most populous region in the country, after 4. And then one in the Lima area and a Regina area, because SUDI can't handle those capabilities. Each of these hospitals would have several operating theaters and a whole range of services that the current hospitals cannot provide in a modern environment. In a modern environment with CT scans and all of those things. So it is, you don't need a study to improve the quality of health care. We know what the level of services we want to offer. These are basically replacement hospitals there. Those are the 6. Then there are 4 other hospitals that we're doing, but in the hinterland. These hospitals will be at Lethem. So the hinterland hospitals would be more telemedicine type of diagnostic centers, high end. So in each of the 4, 1, 7, 8, and 9, we'll have these at Camarang, in Region 1, at Moruca, and Lethem, and then I think it's not Parmakatoy, it's one of the other villages. I forgot the name of the village in Keto. So these are the 4 hospitals there that will bring great diagnostic but telemedicine capability to the people of those regions. So they will be able to do all the diagnostics. It would cut down our need to fly people out, medevac them, and we can do more complex diagnosing of the patients without the need to have personnel present in the region, because you would be able to see the people from doctors right here in Georgetown or maybe in New York and interface with the patients through the telemedicine capabilities. The one for women and children, I don't think we even need the justification for that. We need to, our infant mortality and maternal mortality have been too high historically. We've worked very hard to reduce that, and then the complex operations for our children and women can't be done in the current environment. Georgetown Hospital is overcrowded. We'll remove those 2 sections out of the Georgetown Hospital in a modern 160 million, over 250 room hospital at Ogle. The same thing, New Amsterdam, I saw Stabrook questioning the justification. Their biggest concern is that Jagdeo somehow break down some building that had historic significance when we were building the new hospital through the Japanese grant there. The New Amsterdam Hospital, I broke down some building there. I don't know. That was the Stabrook biggest gripe about it. And saying, why do you need a hospital like that in New Amsterdam? A 160 million, 5 operating theaters, etc. They don't understand that's a large county. That with a new bridge, and we are going to build a 4-lane bridge across the Berbice River. We already have that in the works. We're planning it, which will start to replace the floating bridge too. It would cater with some of the most sophisticated surgeries for people from Region 5 and 6. The people in those areas deserve also modern facilities, or only Georgetown. Here we should build that in. The people in those regions too. So this is an investment. We must build back an old building there for them in New Amsterdam. Something. And we intend to use the existing hospital to refashion it into the premier, rehabilitate it into a premier mental health facility for the country because the other facility was run down. We're spending $30 million on upgrading Linden. So the money we spend on upgrading Linden alone would be equivalent to like one of the hospitals we're building, say in Skeldon. We're upgrading Linden, upgrading Bess, we're upgrading Bartica. We'll upgrade even Suddy. All of that is part of a plan for better health care to the people of this country. So everything is thought out. And in fact, we should be lauded. So if the hospital is delayed by 3 months, heaven helps us with the Starbrook. Oh, it's going to be delayed by 3 months. Not that at the end of this, you would have a modern network of hospitals with the facilities now. That doesn't make better health care in the country. It just gives you the facilities to deliver better health care. Parallel, we're working on personnel. We're working on management through an arrangement with a US-based institution. We're working on the private sector, incentivizing them for better health care too by removing the corporate tax. This is a sector plan that we have. So every time they see the president opens the New Amsterdam Hospital, big hullabaloo, up news say, oh, we were thinking about something, I'm sure, Starbucks saying, don't build it, etc. This represents an implementation of a master plan. It took a lot of work to get there. The location, the design, the studies, all of these things to get to the point of signing. They should laud us for this. They should say, oh, in such a short period of time, the government has done all of this, instead of saying, oh, another one of these promises, and we don't know if it will happen. It's happening before your eyes. It's happening before your eyes. So that's the second thing. And then what was the police station. Similarly, we have a master plan for improving security in the country, security. So we need to do that. We need better trained police, which we're working on separately. But we also need a whole range of facilities and technology and upgrade of the environment. You need that building, and you need, which would be a central police station that can do a large number of things, not just policing. But have you gone to like Scotland Yard? I've gone there and seen how operations are done. The central police station, it might be 12 stories high, but it would be the nerve center for crime fighting across the country. And in a modern environment, we have to support, the technology will support it. It has to be bolstered by good quality forensic labs. We're already putting in security cameras with facial recognition software. We're working on a biometric project that would allow us to know where every person in Guyana, every criminal in Guyana who has a record, we can pinpoint where they are at any moment in time. Through facial recognition software, we'll be able to track every person who comes into our country who overstays their visa or anything else. All of that being worked in at different pieces. So it is not just a building we're putting up there. It is a plan we're rolling out. So that has to be done, as well as upgrading all of our police stations across the country, as well as better equipping them and ensuring that we use technology for better security in our country. It's part of a security plan.
question of with the hospitals and so on, do you think that the government will be able to reverse the tide with respect to the bleeding of nurses that we've been seeing over the years?
It hopefully over the long run. We'd have to keep training people all the time. We'd have to bring in people. We have some people now from other parts, the same way our nurses are being stolen. I think we may have to do some of this policy ourselves. You have some registered nurses around the world that who we may be able to recruit to at pretty competitive rates, nearly competitive with what we pay a nurse now here. And we have to explore all sorts of things to keep our hospitals going. So we should, in the outer years when our income levels go up significantly, that's when you start seeing the outer years when you can sustain it from a predictable flow, higher income levels. We should be able to do that. And we're designing even the hospitals and our system. We're designing it in a fashion, although we want to modernize, we don't want to overload ourselves with future recurrent costs. So that is an essential part of the design strategy. So I can tell you, that is why I said no plan. I can tell you what our security plan is. I can tell you what our health sector plans are. I didn't even go into half of it about how we're rolling this out and better services. Almost every area, even the infrastructure master plan that you see being rolled out across the country now. We can go into it. You ask APNU for any specifics on any of the projects that they were even contemplating, and you will see they don't have those. Yes. Thank you.